Hello, internet friends. Ray Edwards here, and this week's video is about how to get out of overwhelm. And I laugh because I have experienced a considerable amount of overwhelm over the last 2 to 3 weeks. We just completed a very successful product launch of the Copywriting Academy. And don't worry, I'm not selling that because that enrollment is closed. So you're safe from my sales wizardry. But for a lot of reasons, this was a very stressful launch. Most of it was stuff that had nothing to do with the actual product or the launch. It was having to do with just personal challenges that all arose at the same time. Illnesses of several people in my family, on my team. It just was crazy. And it seemed like every time we turned around, there was a challenge. And there was more and more to do, more fires to put out, more things to take care of, and less time to do it. And you ever have those times and you just get to the point where you're just like, I can't take any more. And that seems like it's code to the universe to say, oh yes, you can, let me show you. So what do you do when you're overwhelmed? Because I don't know if you can tell this by looking at me right now, I'm not overwhelmed now. And the fact is I have more to do now than I did during all that crazy time I was just talking about. I'm getting ready to go to San Diego to speak at Social Media Marketing World. I'll see you there. I've got a book I'm working on. I've got a bunch of copy that's due. I've got classes to teach in the academy. I've got coaching calls to do. I've got 3 workshops I'm doing this year with Donald Miller and getting ready to go to Nashville to do that. So much. Ray, tell me how I get out of overwhelm. You're just making me more stressed out, telling me all your stuff. Okay, calm down, sunshine. Here's the best way I've found to get out of overwhelm. First, if you are a spiritually inclined person, whatever your practice is, I'm a follower of Jesus, so my practice is to pray to the Lord. Lord, I put this in your hands. I trust that you're going to make all things work out for my good. And I know that you say in your word, if you're for me, if God is for me, who can be against me? So I have that prayer time. And then there's a saying I saw recently, I don't know who originally said this, but I love it. It says, pray as if everything depended on God, then work as if everything depended on you. So that's what I do. I kick into work mode. And what I'm going to recommend you do, what works for me, is make a list of everything you can think of that's overwhelming you, everything you have to do that's part of the overwhelm. This kind of harkens back to David Allen's GTD mind dump, I think is what he calls it. List. But just write down on a legal pad or a whiteboard or whatever works for you, everything that's part of you feeling overwhelmed, all the stuff. If it's 100 things or 300 things, write them all down. And then after you do that, go back over that list and just look at it and ask yourself, is there anything on this list that I can just decide I'm not doing that? I'm out on that one. Cross all those off and cross as many of them off as you can. Then out of what's left, ask yourself, which of these things can be done by somebody else? Not it's convenient to be done by somebody else, not that, well, if I were more comfortable, I would have somebody else do it, or not if I could find somebody who could do it better than I can, then I would have, no, just which things they could possibly be done by somebody else, even if they're done worse than you would do them. So it's just, is it possible this could be done by somebody else? Circle all those items. I mean, literally pause this video and do this, or else it won't help you. It'll just be mental imagination. So now you've crossed off a bunch of items on your list that's overwhelming you, and you've circled a bunch of items that you're going to assign to other people now. I know what you're thinking. Ray, nobody can do this as well as I can. I'm worried that they'll do a bad job, they'll misrepresent me somehow. Get over yourself. You're not that important to the functioning of the world. Sorry, that's just how it is. Because when you exit this planet, it will continue to turn. It will continue to rotate. Life will go on. So you are important. Don't get me wrong. You're super important to God, to me, to other people. but you're not so important that you can't delegate some things and be okay with them being done less well than you would do them. Please. Okay, so now you've delegated a bunch of stuff, you crossed a bunch of stuff off. Now you're left with a list of the things that only you can do. Now look at that list and ask yourself very carefully about each item. Are any of these things out of my control? Have I just put something on my list that I really can't do anything about, but it has me stressed out? Cross those items off. Now you should be left with a much smaller list of stuff that needs to be done, that you can do, and that only you can do. Now, look at that list and ask yourself, what is the very next thing on this list that must be taken care of? So you might have 100 things left on your list, but in 2 hours, you've got a meeting where you have to make a presentation. That's the next thing on that list. Regardless of whether there's something bigger looming tomorrow, the meeting and the presentation in 2 hours is the next thing. So now ask, what is the next physical action I can take to make that happen? And this is straight GTD, David Allen. It's not going to be work on presentation, because that's not an action you can take. It's going to be outline main points. It's going to be type up notes. Those are next actions you can take. And then after you do that next action, ask yourself on that same project that you're working on, like the presentation in 2 hours, what's the next step that I can take? The next physical action step that I can take? Well, maybe it's you've finished the presentation now. Maybe it's practice the presentation 3 times. And you keep asking, what's the next physical action, until you realize this is either all I can do now because of time and space constraints, or I'm done. And in either case, you move on to the next thing that you have to do. What's next it's coming up in the time stream? What comes after that presentation? And do the same thing. If you will practice what I've just gone over with you, I have found this to be the ultimate, always reliable formula for getting out of overwhelm. Try it and let me know how it works. I think it's going to work fantastic for you. So I'm Ray Edwards. I hope this was helpful to you. If you have comments or thoughts or questions, put them below this video. And if you liked it, I would be honored if you give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. You can even say why you didn't like it. That's okay with me. Just be civil. Use language you wouldn't be embarrassed to use in front of your granny. And I invite you to subscribe to this YouTube channel. I bring stuff like this every week, most weeks. So thanks for watching. I know time is your most precious commodity, and I'm so honored that you invested some of it with me. See you next week.